To all of my people that have gone through depression, I just want to share one thing. Snap out of it. Just kidding, just kidding. Keep watching. That was a bad joke, and that's actually like the worst freaking thing ever. So, anyway, if you're new to my channel, my name is Rosie. I am a woman in long-term recovery with bipolar disorder. I am a mom. I'm a health educator, not a doctor. Nothing that I say should be construed as medical advice, but I would be willing to, I'm not a psychiatrist, but I would be willing to bet that I've probably been to way more psychiatrist appointments and med reviews, had a lot more lived experiences and different medications, including for depression and other things, than most psychiatrists. So that's the angle that I'm coming from. Anyway, this was sort of prompted from a couple reasons. A viewer gave me a direct message about what might I do to support a friend that that has bipolar disorder. But this could apply for today, certainly, to depression as well. You know, maybe things to look out for or ways to help support. So, P.S. Thank you so much for that question. So this is what came to mind today. As a person with bipolar disorder, I have said in the past, when I was in the throes of depression, and I will say that I am so grateful that I have not experienced as much depression as deep or as long as many people. There's only been once in my life that I even contemplated suicide, and even at that time I knew that I wouldn't carry it out. And before I get into my thing, I want to say that depression is, well, let me say, I talk a lot about language and the importance of using correct, sensitive language. And sometimes we just don't know. I've been an advocate for a long time, maybe not as outspoken as I have become with starting this channel, but the terminology that was always thrown around was committed suicide. And I learned from an advocate whose daughter died by suicide that is the more sensitive terminology is not committed suicide, which kind of implies that the individual is at fault. Like, geez, how could they, or, you know, what a cop out, or whatever kind of, you know, it's like committed, like it's a cause of death. And you know, so I don't pretend to directly like understand what it is like, but I just, because I am an empathetic person, I can imagine what a difficult state, like, not even doing the words justice, that somebody would be in to die by suicide. I talked about that in my first or second video here, because I was, you know, I'm a newer mom, and I definitely have had extra changes in mood since becoming a mom. You know, I had gotten to a period of a lot of stability, and I didn't take any medication for almost a year, around the time of being pregnant, and I had a really wonderful pregnancy. Anyway, so I had heard something about an increase in maternal suicide this year. I tried to do some research on it and couldn't find much data about it this evening. I didn't look too hard didn't do a very long search. I couldn't access my Google Scholar account. But I believe it, because there has been, for anyone, just so much this year in 2020. So just so depression and suicidality are very, very, very things to take very seriously. And so now, since I got that point there, what I used to say when I was depressed was, everybody is bothered when you're manic, but nobody cares when you're depressed. That was honestly how I felt, and I still feel like that a little bit. And so what do I mean by that? That's a pretty depressed sounding thing to say, but everybody wants you to get on meds or whatever when you're manic, but nobody even cares when you're depressed. And so why did I say that, and why does that resonate with you at all? Because mania and the lead up to that are so much more out there, right? It's a lot more noticeable. I will speak for myself and maybe some of the people that just for myself anyway. The behavior is more risky. I'm out there, I'm talking people's heads off and not even making a lot of sense half the time, and super confident, overconfident to the point of taking risks that are not reasonable in retrospect. Just the first cue to the beginner level psychology student that I was seeing before I got diagnosed, before I had my first, before I got diagnosed and had a kind of, manic episode. I had a manic episode, which culminated in this big, overblown public incident, right? I was getting to that point, and I said, I think I figured it all out. I think I'm a genius. I feel like that should have been a red flag. It's just there's this overconfidence a lot of the time. It's just this wild stuff, and it gets to people sometimes. They're annoyed. They're, but when you're depressed, it's it manifests in a lot of different ways. And again, I'm not an expert. But I did brush up a little bit on some reading prior to this, and the different ways that it can manifest. Besides the obvious, I've talked about this before, it's not just sad and crying, but it certainly can be that too. And especially if it's tears every day, sobbing, but it's not always that. Like I said before, it can be pain, which I didn't know at the time. I think it's more in women, but again, verify your research. I don't just talk out of my arse, but this isn't an academic, cited thing. I'm going to leave some links in the description below though, so check out some of those articles, and then if you're really scholarly, go find some primary resources. And if that's not at all your thing, and you're, or even if it is, if you're in a crisis, talk to your medical people. Okay. Or go to the ER. Okay. Or call a crisis line. I'm going to put that info below. So, the depression manifests in different ways, having a hard time focusing, not being motivated. Like I've said before, for me, a lot of the time it's just, in the past, it's been I just can't get out of bed. I don't want to get out of bed. I don't see any reason. When I am, I'm just blah, that difficulty focusing. In elderly people, it can also manifest like as difficulty remembering things, and even just in regular folks, right? Because I don't know, it's just like everything slows down. It's like some people describe it as a brain fog. But so my experience when I first said that, 10 years ago or whatever, when I was in a depression after being very over medicated, kind of had to be maybe over medicated, but I was so hit with all these meds to get me off of that mania that I basically just was in bed for 4 months. And on some level, my brain probably needed that healing because I had been living this lifestyle for some years, at least some very long months of very little sleep, and that sleep debt is a real thing. And so my brain did heal. I had to drop out of school for that because I couldn't even I was just 14 hours a day in bed. I'm telling a lot of stories. I didn't think I was gonna tell all these stories. My background looks like I'm in a heating and cooling video, but anyway, nope, we're talking about manic depression, as they used to call it. Still a great song by Jimi Hendrix. Okay, so it can manifest in pain, it can manifest in difficulty concentrating, focusing, remembering things, physical pain. I also read that in older men, that depression can manifest as being cranky. And for me, I often get irritable when, anything's off. But the hypomania, I get, I guess with depression, anxiety. But usually if you're just spending your time in bed, moping around, you're quiet. That's why I said nobody cares, because people don't always notice. That was my perception. Okay, and so I started this whole thing with the hook of snap out of it, because I see I don't know, I bookmarked some of these videos to watch later, but I don't know if I can actually bring myself to watch them. Maybe to get the op-ed. What's the other opinion? Maybe there's some validity to this. Hey, if you're depressed or anxious, you just need to suck it up and snap out of it, and you're not really depressed or anxious. Those are the headers for these videos, and I'm I'm kind of triggered by those. I don't know if I want to see them. But I'm that Libra balance scale person, so I'm going to have the other side. My experience and some research that backs this up. I'm going to link an article below from Harvard Medical Review. That was a pretty rigorous study just from a year ago, that snapping out of it sometimes is, I'm not putting words in their mouth, but snapping out of it sometimes is what we need to do. This is my point today. What do I mean by that? When you're depressed, you don't have the freaking motivation or energy or anything to snap out of it. If it was that fucking easy, I would have done it already, right? That's what I hear when I hear somebody say, just snap out of it. This is a chemical imbalance, mother effer, right? But I talked about this in another video too, about how I got off of antidepressants and stayed off of them even when I felt this seasonal depression and event-related depression and just whatever chemical depression kicking in. Now granted, it was easier because I hadn't gone that far down, but those little incremental things that actually help us to kind of snap out of it, right? So what I mean specifically by this is when I'm depressed, when a lot of people are depressed, they want to isolate. right? That's another, like, that was another thing that I've experienced, and is documented that a lot of other people do this as well, right? When we're manic, we're out there in everyone's face. They don't necessarily want us to be in their face all the time. When we're depressed, it's like, oh no, I'm not gonna go. No, maybe I'll go, but then it comes up and it's like, no. And it's a lot of effort, and it's a lot of like anxiety too that goes along with it, which I don't pretend to understand the relationship between depression and anxiety, but apparently it exists. Certainly I've experienced it myself. I'm still trying to figure that one out for me. But like, if someone can somehow like pull you out, even if it's just like a little, like, or if you can even pull yourself out, like, whatever you can muster. Like I mentioned in another video, when I was in that long over medicated / depression, I had to move back in with my parents. That was like, I love them, but that was depressing because I felt like I failed at almost 30 years old, moving back in with my parents. And my dad would come and bring me a cup of coffee into bed because, like, God bless him, I couldn't even get out of bed, and he knew that. Like, I didn't ask. He didn't really. He would just come and bring it, and like that got me out of bed. Coffee doesn't work for everyone. I know I talk a lot about coffee, but like having a sunrise alarm, or like just flipping on the light, or like jumping in the shower and putting on clothes, even if you don't have to go anywhere, or just like going somewhere. That was the other thing that there's some really good evidence that suggests that, like, the best thing, especially for the elderly, is connection, social connection, which also explains, right, one of the reasons why COVID-19 and 2020 have been so difficult for so many of us, and especially like affecting people's mental health. I really think mental illness is like the secondary pandemic, because people are isolated, they're not connected, and there's something with like the face-to-face. I've been really relying on video chats, as well as like we open up our circle to our grandparents, but seeing people, like, even when you don't wanna, right? Like, I can remember friends doing that for me when I was depressed, like, just like making it easy for me, giving me the grace that, like, it's probably gonna make me super anxious and not want to go if it's gonna be like this big ordeal, or like I have to like do a bunch of preparation, or like it's like this huge number of people, because social anxiety, obviously that's not so much of a thing right now. Well, it shouldn't be. I mean, no judgment. Anyway, but I guess I'm judging. Anyway, masks on. Oh my gosh, so many tangents. This is my longest video ever yet. I'm just trying to address like a big thing. What can you do for a friend? How can you recognize? What can you do for yourself in regards to depression, to help them help you? And I say this in like a somewhat in jest, but also like in a loving way. Snap out of it, right? Because there's something that happens chemically as well as emotionally, mentally, maybe spiritually, that does like shift when the fog starts to lift. And it's not like, I'm gonna stop using that phrase because I don't want to trigger people. It's like I always used to hate it when people would say after pregnant, like, oh, you're gonna bounce back right away, your body's gonna bounce back. I'm like, what is, no. Oh, okay, so that's another channel even, I don't know, my whole mom story, but it's related, it's all related. So I don't know, like, you can recognize when someone just falls off the face of the earth. Call again, leave a message, leave a text, send a telegram, let them know you're thinking about them. Try to go see them, like, somehow, like, go to the house, like, say, hey, you want to go sit on the porch? You want to put your coat on and, like, go walk to the end of the driveway? Or, you know, like, this is what I think as a friend maybe could help someone. Just listen. Don't judge. Understand. Ask the question. Educate yourself about suicide awareness, and ask, are you thinking about harming yourself or someone else? With postpartum, it can also manifest like as, you know, thoughts of harming oneself or your baby. And even though, you know, like, and then the shame that goes along with that, and that actually, I mean, postpartum depression is not like, quote, normal, right? It's not the normal state, but it's common, and that is a common thing as well. You know, feeling disconnected from the baby is a symptom of postpartum depression. Feeling disconnected, I think, from people in general is something that I've experienced. Kind of goes along with one of those videos where, like, it's not them, it's you, it's not you, it's them. Like, where do you figure that out? Gosh. Okay. And how can I wrap this up nicely? A lot of smiles for such a serious topic, because it really is grave. And yeah, so I guess I will just bring it back to my own, because I'm not really in the business of giving advice, certainly not in the business of giving medical advice. These are just suggestions, but you know, so for myself, like, putting out the lifeline, asking for help has been key for me, and then accepting the help. People don't always notice one way or the other, because a lot of the time everyone else is so wrapped up in their own selves. For better and for worse, we're all the centers of our own universe. So people don't always notice what we're going through. It's not like people don't care. Sometimes they just don't notice. Sometimes we don't notice it about ourselves. So, you know, being sensitive to language and being aware. And for me, when I have being sensitive to language, being an open ear, and like being somebody that like a friend could confide in, that you know, they feel safe. And then, you know, for me, like those little like atomic habits, to borrow someone else's title, right? Whatever I can muster to, like, I'm going to use this phrase one more time. Like, it's not like snap out of it, like all of a sudden one day I woke up and was just like, screw you, depression. I'm going to go do a triathlon today. Take on the world. Unfortunately, I don't know of anyone for whom that has happened. Maybe someone that has rapid cycles. But more realistically, it's like, okay, gosh, God, I just don't feel like it, but like, I'm just gonna take a shower. And then like, hey, I feel a little better. And then like allowing myself to like celebrate, like, hey, I was too depressed to shower for 4 days this week, and I took a shower and I washed my hair, and I feel better. And hey, like, pat myself on the back. Or like, you know, I can't even imagine the thought of like walking a mile, like, but I'm gonna walk around the block. But hey, this feels pretty good. And then it like starts to actually change the chemical state a little. And then like I could do more and more, and it's other research that definitely supports that moving around. And it doesn't have to be like CrossFit. It doesn't even have to be like they're saying, like, you know, necessarily like planned exercise. It's being active throughout the day. So it could be like parking further out in the parking lot, parking, you know, toward the back of the parking lot. Always park in a lit spot, well-lit spot at night, ladies. Not next to any weird-looking vans. Okay, that's my other PSA. I got a lot of them. I'll be here all night. But actually, I think it's probably time for me to wrap it up. I'm just going to put this out into the ethers. Hashtag unedited as usual. I don't even know. It's past my bedtime. Well, not quite, but it's my bedtime. And there's all my disclaimers and yada, yada, yada. Here I am, perfectly imperfect, bipolar brilliance. Share this with someone if you think that it could help them. And if there's something that you would like to see me address in a future video, you can comment below, or you can direct message me, or with anything else, comments or whatever, at bipolirbrilliancecoaching@gmail.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe and keep your notifications on, because I am posting frequently here, and most of the videos aren't this long. Okay. À demain. See you tomorrow. Be well. Take care of yourselves and each other.